we finished Vajra Statement 21. Now that we are going to look at 22. So statement 22 says, in terms of the teaching that desire causes obstacles, both the sutra and the secret mantra traditions consider this to be the same. So, or in that desire causes obstacles, the sutra and the mantra traditions are the same, as in whether you practice according to the sutra tradition or the secret mantra tradition, both traditions consider desire to be a troublemaker. So this, of course, this statement is made in response to people who, again, people, they base what they say on a particular understanding, maybe too literal of an understanding of what is found sometimes in the tantras, especially in the unexcelled or the highest yoga tantra traditions. You might get statements that say, desire is great, desire is wonderful, desire is something that, and the more you have, the better it is. And this can cause misunderstanding. Then also, if you look at Vajrayana iconography, representations of deities, you will see deities, divine forms depicted, male and female embracing in union. And so that then further gives the impression, somehow when you get to secret mantra, everything that was taught earlier to be obstacles, to be obscurations, to be cleared, to be removed, suddenly in secret mantra, they all become permissible. So Jigten Sumgon is saying, actually we need to understand that whether you're practicing in the general sutra system or the more specifically secret mantra system, in both cases, you first need to understand that desire is still an obstacle to be cleared, an obstacle to be purified. Now, the method of clearing and purify, respectively, the methods that you find in the general sutra tradition and the methods that you find in the secret mantra tradition, they are different. They are different. But before you try to apply secret mantra method of clearing this obstacle of desire, first you need to understand fundamentally, if it is desire, if it is attachment, if it is lust, doesn't matter, sutra or mantra. Actually, it doesn't even matter. As Khenpo Rinpoche always reminds us, doesn't even matter if it is Buddhism or not. Just look around in the world, with or without religion, with or without vows, with or without anything, with or without whatever you believe or don't believe. Desire, attachment, grasping, all of these are troublemakers. They cause, problems. They disrupt our natural state. So first we have to see that, and the same applies, for anger, jealousy, and all these afflictive emotions, It doesn't matter whether it's even, sutra tradition, mantra tradition, just in the natural state of all things. The afflictive emotions are afflictive. It doesn't matter, whether you are in this tradition or that tradition, and we cannot say, oh, we Buddhists, these things are obstacles. Oh, you Christians, oh, those things are not obstacles to you. They don't cause problems in people who don't believe. I don't believe that desire is a problem. So desire doesn't cause me any problems. Well, in that case, better not to believe anything. Then nothing will cause you problems. But then we say, that is like, not sure if this is true, maybe people just given ostriches a bad name. But they say, if an ostrich is chased, sometimes you'll see them, sticking their head into the desert sand and think that since they cannot see the enemies chasing them, then the enemies also cannot see them. Probably not true. I've never seen a picture of an ostrich sticking its head into the sand. But it makes a very good point that just because you think, oh, this is not an obstacle, this is not a problem for me, like sticking your head in the sand and thinking, oh, my enemies cannot see me, they won't be able to shoot me. When your whole ostrich body, huge, tall legs, it's clearly visible and clearly a target, right? So it doesn't work like that, But specifically here, the context of 522 is that, in fact, lots of people go around saying, oh, we practice Vajrayana, desire, no problem. Especially these tantric yogis, they call themselves tantric yogis, a little bit wild, and then don't have the monk's vows or nun's vows, running around, maybe even with lots of girlfriends and boyfriends or whatever friends, and they say, oh, I'm a Vajrayana practitioner, I'm secret mantra, desire, no problem, We'll see, no problem or not. So here Khenpo Kunpal, in his commentary, he says, if one acts carelessly with attachment to the 5 objects of desire, that is form, sound, smell, taste, and contact, then it causes obstacles for attaining the higher realms and for attaining nirvana. And so carelessly, carelessly means, abandoning discipline. We talked about discipline. Discipline protects us from becoming unruly, from the mind becoming out of control, from the mind losing presence, mindfulness. So if you act carelessly, if you throw away discipline, which is the subject of the previous statement, if you throw away disciplined conduct and instead let attachment take over, then your 5 objects of desire, the 5 types, desirable sights, desirable sounds, desirable taste, desirable sensation, desirable, all these objects of desire, when the mind flows towards them, then basically the mind is under the power of these things. Then what happens when the mind is under the power of these objects of desire? Then the mind becomes enslaved by these objects of desire. Once we are enslaved, once we are entangled, then we have no freedom. So, in this regard, the Buddha taught that both sutra and mantra traditions are the same in meaning. It has the same intention. It has the same meaning. It has the same point. And just because there are these, we differentiate into these 2 traditions insofar as this issue of is desire an obstacle or not, both traditions will say, yes, of course it is an obstacle. Yes, of course, it is a hindrance. Yes, of course, it is a troublemaker. So then what do? We need to clear desire. How? Yes, you can say Sutra has its own approach. Then within the range of Sutra teachings, there's also various different ways to handle this obstacle, this hindrance of desire. Likewise, in Secret Mantra, it has its own set of techniques. It is said, what I, meaning the Buddha, have guaranteed to be obstructing phenomena cannot be disputed by any being. Meaning, you cannot say, oh, well, some later Mahasiddha said desire is not a problem. Well, are we saying that a later Mahasiddha is more realized than a full Buddha? That would be absurd. Right? Again, sometimes people get carried away that way. So excited about these great Mahasiddhas. I suspect the younger you are, the more likely you get excited by the Mahasiddhas and their outrageous ways of behavior. Give yourself a few more years where you don't have that much energy. You're like, oh, Shakyamuni is pretty good. So anyway, joking aside, we have to be clear. We say we follow the Buddha's way. Well, then if we ignore the Buddha's basic position on this, and then quote this Mahasiddha, that Mahasiddha, then are we really practicing the Buddha Dharma? Right? Anyway, coming back here, Khenpo Kunpal says, and it is said in the Vinaya treatises that desires are like poison, enemies, poisonous snakes, and so forth. It is said in the Transcendent Wisdom Sutra, quote, if desire obstructs birth in the Brahma world, in the realm of forms and the formless realms within samsara, so if desire, would prevent you from being born into a higher place within samsara, then there's no need to mention how desire is an obstruction, an obstacle towards attaining nirvana. So this is quoting a Perfection of Wisdom Sutra from an important text in the Sutra tradition. Next, he quotes an important text in the Secret Mantra tradition. So it is said in the first section of the Vajra Tantra. Sometimes the Vajra Tantra is called the Tantra in two sections because it has two parts. So in part one, in the first section of the Vajra, quote, Vajragarbha asked, Exalted One, what is impure? The Buddha replied, it is the five, that is form and so forth. So this is explained as the objects of the senses. They are impure, meaning they will afflict you, they will stain you. So you have to have a careful relationship with these objects of desire. When the Kalachakra teaches the 25 ascetic practices, it states that if one has attachment to the five objects, what the eyes like to see, what the ears like to hear, what the nose likes to smell. So if one has attachment to these five types of objects, then your pleasures will be damaged. Your samaya will be damaged. Thus the reasoning is stated. Therefore, although Jigten Sumgon, who has realized this point, is equal to Master Virupa in ultimate powers, Jigten Sumgon took full ordination in the Buddha's tradition. So this is to say, insofar as Jigten Sumgon's attainment, Khenpo Kunpal says here, no different from the great Mahasiddha Virupa. Virupa did not take on the appearance, did not formally adopt the appearance of a monk. Famously, he performed all kinds of miracles. all kinds, and also seemingly, had these kind of outrageous, behavior. But of course, he is not like outrageous behavior without power. He has the power to transform. So it is said that he famously would hang out at the local bars and appears to be drinking copious amount of alcohol. But the thing is, his alcohol is transformed. Not symbolically transformed, it's really transformed. These days, people are like, oh, I'm going to consume alcohol. I have transformed that into nectar and I'm offering it to the deity, then I cannot be harmed. But the substance, I can guarantee you, when they say like that, the actual substance, you take to a lab, the alcohol content is still there. In Virupa's case, it's not really there. Like the power to change that into something else, into the elixir of wisdom. So it says that, Jigten Sumgon's attainment and Virupa, no difference. But Jigten Sumgon showed the example of taking full ordination after his enlightenment. So here, interestingly, it shows Jigten Sumgon have enough power of realization that with or without formally becoming a monk, he was able to achieve Buddhahood. But after that happened, eventually he took the monk's vows. Why? Precisely because so many people see, in his biography it says, people see that he has not become a monk and they immediately jump into conclusion, oh, maybe desire, attachment is okay. So this is how, especially in 12th century Tibet, when there is a spiritual practitioner who doesn't look like a monk, immediately people jump into conclusion, oh, he must be one of those tantric yogis that have many dakini partners. That desire is no problem for him. Then people also think, well, maybe, so the men probably look at him, will say, oh, maybe I can be like him. Then the women that see him will say, wow, maybe I can be his spiritual partner. In fact, in his life story, it says, one of his senior Dharma brother had a daughter, and the daughter mistakenly thought the reason why Jigten Sumgon did not become a monk is because, he's hinting that he would like to have, these consorts. So then people kept proposing to him, directly or indirectly, until he finally said, I should become a monk just to let people know, this is not what's going on. Stop trying to offer yourself to me. So that's one reason, why he took his monk's vows. Because people have this. So more than just, him finding it annoying that people kept coming to kind of offer themselves to him. More than that, he really wants to make this point in statement 22. Desire, attachment, lust is equally a problem, whether sutra, whether mantra, whether whatever tra, with or without tra, sutra, mantra, whatever tra you have or don't have, attachment and desire and lust, these are all going to entail suffering. You don't want suffering, you work on clearing these. So here, concerning this, the yogi Dorje Sherab said in his Dorshema, well, it is taught that one will accomplish secret mantra by relying on desires. How is that? The Buddha intended it for persons with strong antidotal practices, whose minds, like a lotus flower, is unstained by the mud around them, are unstained despite remaining amid objects of sense pleasures. This is very difficult, even 100 or 1,000 times more than to traverse the path by abandoning what must be abandoned using antidotes, which is the sutra tradition. However, if one can rely on that kind of method, one will attain Buddhahood in one lifetime, like King Indrapati. So here, Dorshema, one of the earliest commentaries of Gongchik, says, it is possible if you are really, really skilled, but it's almost impossible. To do what? Not to take desire, but to be in the midst of objects of desire and not to be affected by the objects of desire. He's not saying, Dorje Sherab is not saying letting objects of desire take over and still, I'm a great Vajrayana practitioner. He says that's impossible. But to remain unaffected by the objects of desire, to be able to demonstrate actually full power over desire. So King Indrapati, in his circumstance, did not become a monk, because there he is going to demonstrate to others. Even though I'm a king, even though I dwell in a palace where I have access to all objects of desire that I want, I'm not interested. I have no interest, and they have no power over me. So then he remained a king to show that. So this is how to. So when you see, these examples, you have to understand, what these examples are actually teaching and communicating, and not end up with the wrong communication. Yeah. Rizin Chodra said, so this is Dharmakirti, although you can understand the present topic based on the above Vajra statement, let me here again summarize the meaning of this intention behind always prohibited and always permitted, always prescribed and always proscribed, and so forth. To avoid extreme indulgence in desires leading to damage of one's merit, the Buddha only permitted ordinary livelihood. With the intention that one is allowed to enjoy without attachment, the Buddha permitted or prescribed anything and taught that one needs to be content. In the secret mantra, the objects of the sense pleasures can be used without attachment in terms of the two stages, but not with desire. So what Chodra is saying is, first of all, you need to understand Kyobpa Rinpoche's statement about how what is prescribed by the Buddha as virtuous, as skillful, those things are always skillful, always virtuous. What the Buddha proscribed, what the Buddha says, don't do this, don't do that, they are always the same, because he's pointing at the causes of suffering. So first you have to understand that. Then, to avoid the extreme of indulging in desires to the point of leading to damage one's merit, then the Buddha only permitted ordinary livelihood. Here it's unclear. I think the translation maybe it's not very clear. I have to say, I have to research more to understand, to look at the original Tibetan here. Now, with the intention that one is allowed to enjoy without attachment, or rather with regards to this idea that you can enjoy without attachment, Then what's going on there is the Buddha permitted anything and taught that one needs to be content. Again, the translation here I think is a little unclear. But the main point is you need to be content. So this issue of contentment or satisfaction. So desire itself is not yet the direct cause of pain or dukkha. It's the lack of satisfaction, the lack of contentment. So the more you cannot achieve the object of your desire, then the more you are deprived of, so to say, the more you are not able to achieve satisfaction and contentment. If you find satisfaction and contentment, or maybe a better word here is satisfaction. Contentment sounds like, oh, I cannot get it, so I'll just be content. Oh, I tried so hard, I cannot get it. Okay, I'll just be content now. Not contentment in that way. But rather contentment, but rather it's talking about satisfaction. That you're satisfied. You are satiated. You're fine. You don't need it. You don't need to be dragged around by these objects of desire. So you're around objects of desire. You can recognize, oh, that picture is so pleasing. Oh, that scent is so satisfying. Oh, that taste is so, so flavorful. Right? You recognize that. But then, tasteful or not tasteful, you are satisfied. So mainly we have to cultivate that satisfaction. In secret mantra, the objects of sense pleasures can be used without attachment in terms of the two stages. And so this is talking about the generation stage and the completion stage. The two stages are the generation stage and the completion stage practice. To use the objects of sense pleasures in terms of these means to perceive everything with pure perception, meaning food as Gana Chakra offerings, beings as deities, sounds as mantras, and so forth, while being free from attachments, since one knows their empty nature. So this is what it means to use attachment, the objects of attachment, objects of sense pleasures, how to relate to them in the two stages of the creation and completion paths. Furthermore, right? He also said, the great purposes that will surely benefit others are not prohibited in any of the three vehicles. It is said in the Vinaya verses, if a novice accepts silver or gold, he commits a fault. However, there is no transgression if he accepts it for the sake of clothing or provisions, for the sake of his body, likewise for medicine or for Dharma purposes. So here it's saying that, so now it's more nuanced. It's saying, yeah, generally it is taught, you don't, a monk or nun should not accept offerings of gold or silver. But then it says, we don't need to just, kind of stick to that letter of the rule rather than understanding that. But, if it is to be used for your basic maintenance, then that's permissible. Concerning the Bodhisattva vow, it is said in the summary that even if one enjoys the 5 objects of sense pleasures, if one has aspiration for all-knowingness, one abides in transcendent discipline. And it is said in the Guide to a Bodhisattva's Way of Life, having understood that for the benefit of others, even the prohibited is permitted for that reason. In the context of secret mantra, it is said, from today onward, you, child, should enjoy the objects of sense pleasure, form, sound, smell, taste, touch, and so forth. Thus the reasoning is stated. In brief, if they bring obstacle to Dharma activities, the objects of sense pleasures are always proscribed in all 3 sets of vows. If they aid Dharma activities, the objects of sense pleasures are always prescribed. It is as with Indra Bhuti and so forth. The realization of non-duality of object and antidote is called unelaborated conduct. The absence of any occasions for prohibitions and permissions is the supreme tenet. The above explanations are meant for those who have not realized this. Now I have to say, in this commentary here, Khenpo Kunpal's way of explaining is maybe a little more to the general understanding. I think in the earlier Drikung tradition, probably it will not go lean in this direction. I think this Vajra statement, the points are more subtle, I would say. So anyway, reading, and then I'm going to look at the big volume and see, in the early commentaries what is being said about this statement. In accord with these ways, Jigten Sumgon said that whatever is an antidote for the afflictions which must be abandoned, and whatever is purposeful in not tying one's mind stream down, and moreover improves one's qualities, that is always permitted for everyone and is faultless. Jigten Sumgon said that the opposites of these are always prohibited and must be avoided. However, he did not teach that there are no differences regarding aspects of what is permitted and what is prohibited, the established and natural misdeeds, depending on temporary particularities of persons. I think that in terms of meaning, Jigten Sumgon and others masters' key points are in harmony. However, you should make sure to become a fortunate scholar by learning and striving for a long time to deeply realize Jigten Sumgon's ultimate heart intention. Yeah, so here, I think it's quite clear. Khenpo Kunpal is having a hard time with this statement. After all, he doesn't come squarely from the Drikung tradition, right? Remember, he's from the Nyingma tradition, and he has his particular commitments to how the Nyingma tradition looks at this issue. So here, he's basically, in this part, he's trying to harmonize Jigten Sumgon with the other master's position. But actually, I think Jigten Sumgon's position can be different. And I think we should not be so eager and so quickly to want to harmonize everything. It's okay, I think, that they have different positions. At the very least, looking at their different positions help us to see more clearly, what is it that Jigten Sumgon is pointing at? What is it that Jigten Sumgon wants us to see? Right? By making statements that are provocative, by making statements that seem to not go in line with what everybody else is saying. And so these statements are meant to be provocative, right? In order to provoke a more nuanced understanding, more clearer understanding, more insight into this matter. So I think that we need to not be afraid of. So this 522 also I think must be the language here is difficult, because fundamentally maybe it's a little bit hard for Khenpo Kunpal to kind of reconcile some of his personal ideas on this subject with this Vajra statement. So maybe, I don't know, I'm just speculating. And so in his commentary, he also writes it in a kind of not so straightforward, which then leads to the translator not being able to really translate, because Khenpo Kunpal is maybe deliberately trying to be a little vague. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm just speculating. Yeah. Now, if we look at the Chodra's his commentary in the large text, so we have Professor Zerbich's translation of the quote from Chodra that Khenpo Kunpal quoted. So here, let me read to you Professor Zerbich's translation. Even if you have understood the meaning of the previous Vajra statement, here, let me summarize that through the intention of invertebrate prohibition and invertebrate permission. It is taught that in order to abandon the extreme of indulging in the sense pleasures out of desire, sense indulgence is not permitted except in minor instances of frugality. That means in limited instances, the Buddha. So this is talking about like, within the context of frugality, not like having a big party, or you are a great teacher, great lama, and you have 3 chefs attending to you, and then you say, "Oh, all of this is okay." So the frugality is talking about, it's like say for example Milarepa, normally he eats only even nettles, doesn't get much, but sometimes he gets like something salt that he can put in his season, his wild nettles. At that time, that is okay. That is permitted, so to say. So this is what it's saying here. If one receives something and thinks that it is permissible because one enjoys it without attachment, one still must be content with what is permitted. So here, if you can enjoy in that moment, so that salt, good, this is very good. But immediately, if satisfaction is not born, instead you go, oh, salt, good. But you know what? If I can get a little bit of pepper, this will be even better. Right? Now Milarepa is very busy already. Now he's thinking, where can I get pepper? Then with pepper, right? You're like, ooh, maybe some habanero. Will make it even better. Then finish, Moreover, concerning the enjoyment of the sense pleasures without attachment, in the state of the 2 stages of mantra practice, it is taught that the external sense objects, such as visible forms, are by nature the female deity. Furthermore, as it is important that these objects are necessary as offerings to the deity, one indulges in enjoying them without attachment. However, one is not to indulge out of desire and longing. So it's saying, so this is talking about Vajrayana methods now. Insofar as Is desire and attachment a problem? Doesn't matter Vajrayana or not Vajrayana. Yes, it is always a problem. Now, in terms of Vajrayana techniques of how to clear and purify desire, then it is saying, instead of taking the approach of, oh, objects of desire, bad, cut, shut down, stay away from. Here Vajrayana says, don't need to cut off objects of desire. When you look at forms, beautiful forms, right? Immediately have the recognition, your eye consciousness touching those forms. So your eye consciousness reaching out to contact with an object of sight, that itself, right, is contact. That contact is enough to give rise to satisfaction. And that you have to train in that way. And go, okay, good. That's it. Enough. So you don't need to shut down. You don't need to I don't want to see objects of desire. You let the objects of that is pleasing to the eyes be. And furthermore, to understand, these are the female deities. And that your eye consciousness have touched them, so to say, or to use more provocative language, have united with them, and that's enough. Satisfaction arises. So that it doesn't cause longing and desiring, like, oh, I want more than that. Oh, I want the next step. Oh, I want, first salt, then pepper, then spicy pepper, then tablecloth, then table service. Yes, so here today we're going to stop here. When we start tomorrow, I'll give you some of Professor Zobish's summary of earlier commentaries on this statement. I think the statement itself is pretty clear, right? The statement itself is clear. I don't think it really needs that much of a commentary. It's saying, although the methods used respectively in the sutra tradition and the mantra tradition are different, and even to the point of maybe if you look on the outside, you don't understand, right? You might even think, oh, is secret mantra saying desire is okay? No, understand that. No matter what tradition, desire is always a troublemaker. But as to how you handle desire, yes, there are differences. And all these differences is not because over here you think desire is not okay, over here you think desire is okay. So we'll stop here today and do the dedication. Sublime, precious, venerable, and glorious root and lineage gurus, assembly of Idam deities, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas dwelling in the 10 directions, and all assemblies of Viras, Viranis, Yoginis, and Dakinis, please heed me. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by me and the entirety of samsara and nirvana and the inherent root of virtue not result in the 8 worldly dharmas, the 4 causes of samsara, and the resultant states of hearers and solitary realizers. And may all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, particularly those enemies who hate us, obstruct us, and those who create obstacles, Maras who mislead, and their Mara retinues, have happiness, be separated from suffering, and quickly attain the unsurpassed, perfect, and precious Bodhi. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may we benefit sentient beings with body, speech, and mind. May the afflictive thoughts of attachment, aversion, ignorance, pride, and jealousy not arise in my mind stream. May thoughts of name, fame, gain, respect, and so forth in this life not arise for even a moment. With my mind stream moistened by love, compassion, and bodhicitta, may I come under the care of virtuous spiritual friends. And having become as limitless as space, may I achieve the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. By the virtues collected in the 3 times by me and the entirety of samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain the unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious Bodhi. Okay, we will have class again tomorrow, as I said, and then on Monday we will also have class. Then a break for a few days until maybe the following week. I should be able to figure out my schedule in Malaysia by then. So all of you have a good day. Today it's also celebrated as Vesak Day. The Southeast Asian Buddhists especially commemorate today, the full moon day of this month, as marking the birth of Siddhartha, the enlightenment, and then the passing away, the great passing away, the great Mahaparinirvana of the Buddha. So if we turn our thoughts and our awareness to these 3 events and train our mind and kind of, be inspired accordingly, then through the interdependence of what happened a long time ago and our remembering of it, then again, all the virtues that we collect today, all the virtues that we engage in today can be magnified and multiplied and transferred to the task of bringing all beings out of the state of suffering and into the state of Buddha. So please try to do random and not so random acts of kindness and clarity today. Yeah. Okay. Goodbye, everyone. Ta-ta.